Welcome to episode 19 of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories. My reader, my storyteller, is the most awesome Lynn Ames. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to know, in the vein of what are you wearing?
I am wearing a graphic tee and boxers.
Boxers. All right. Cool.
Which is pretty much my standard fare for the summer. Then you can just switch out and I have a hoodie and sweatpants, walking around the house.
All right.
Very, very, very lesbian sexy. How about you?
I've got a visual.
How about you? What are you wearing?
It's bedtime, so before I get into bed, an old tank top and a pair of boxers. Mm-hmm. A pair of Ralph Lauren polo boxers with a button front.
Oh, I have a button front too, but mine are Fruit of the Loom.
Love it. Awesome.
All right, now that our listeners have a clear idea that we're both comfort-oriented lesbians, at least for this evening, you are going to be giving us a very nice taster's palette of 3 or 4 different pieces of writing, and one of them is the inspiration for a current title of yours. Could you give us a little bit of a lead up for that?
Sure, I'd absolutely love to. My latest book is called All That Lies Within. All That Lies Within is the story of Dara Thomas, who is an Oscar-nominated actress who longs to be seen as a lot more than just a pretty face. And so what she does is she has a side business, essentially, and her side business is that she is a Pulitzer Prize winning literary author under a pseudonym that no one knows, way before J.K. Rowling decided to write. Anyway, you get the point. So the story is about Dara Thomas, and the other main character is Rebecca Minton, who is a professor of American literature at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont, a place I know pretty well. And the impetus for the book and the whole idea for the book actually sprang from a poem, which is something really completely different for me. I've never had a book pop out of whole cloth into my head, and certainly not from a poem. So I wrote this poem in June of 2012, and then it sort of became the impetus for All That Lies Within. So I thought what I would do is read you the poem from which the book sprang, and then read you an excerpt from the book, the excerpt in which the poem appears, because I thought that would be kind of a cool little circle for you. Are you game?
I'm ready.
So the poem, which appears in the poetry anthology Roses Red, which is widely available to you on Amazon.com, and is edited by my good friend Beth Mitchum, the poem is called Knowledge and Illusion, and it goes like this. Who will know me when I am old and gray, wizened by age and wiser for the experiences? Who knows me now when the glare of the spotlight fades and I am simply me? Who understands that I am at once so much more and so much less? Who sees me, all of me, not the fragments projected on a screen or written on a page or frozen in images that capture glimpses of things real or imagined? Who appreciates the history that informs the core of my being? Who knows my truths, my heart, my soul? I leave a public trail, written words, spoken utterances, encapsulated moments, but in the privacy of my thoughts, in the essence of my soul, in the beating of my heart, I long to be known, seen, understood, and loved for all of who I am. That's the poem Knowledge and Illusion.
So for me, of course, my brain goes all literary and stuff because I used to have a brain on my shoulders. And I was thinking of Virginia Woolf and The Yellow Wallpaper and a lot of other literary fiction, 19th and 18th century stuff where women are trying to explore the idea of identity beyond what the limits of social expectations are.
Yes.
So that's what it made me think of, which is nice. It's definitely literary.
It's literary. It's not what prompted the poem, but it's a beautiful image. And to be, in the same breath with Virginia Woolf makes me happy.
Well, I'm very tangential, but my cognitive processes, I'm always kind of linking things together in my brain. And I was just thinking about, one of the challenges, which I'll talk to you about in another episode, of having something
several months from now.
Well, it's the challenge of having literary fiction within the context of popular fiction romance novel.
That was a great challenge.
Huge.
It was a great challenge, and I'm going to love to talk about that because there's so much to say about it, honestly. And in a sense, it's sort of poking a little bit at the bear, poking at people who look at our fiction and think that it's not literary, and therefore not as good as. Or as worthy as. So it was that was part of the way for me to take a little poke at them.
Oh, Lord, I just hate intellectual snobbery. It bothers me so much.
Well, and so I took care of it.
Yes, there you go.
There you go. It was a literary smackdown.
that is a takeaway line. Yeah. So, as a part of your little smackdown, let's hear this snippet from the book that was born from the poem.
Okay, so this is from All That Lies Within. I'm going to read to you from chapter 10, so we're a good ways into the novel, and I will tell you that Dara has just appeared. She's just finished an appearance on the David Letterman show, and Carolyn, who is in the room with her, Carolyn is her best friend of all time. It's her best friend from childhood. It's also her business manager. So Dara is staying at Carolyn's in New York. And so this is from chapter 10 of All That Lies Within. Dara sat in the dark, fully dressed in Carolyn's guest room. She declined Carolyn's invitation to watch her Letterman appearance. All she could see was Rebecca, and all she could think about was that her jealously guarded privacy was gone. If she was going to be honest, that was the correct order of things. Dara frowned. About the former, she didn't want to care, but in the interest of more candidness, she had to admit that she really did. How did that happen? Rebecca was even more attractive in person than her picture on the college website or in the video of her teaching. Her eyes were kind and luminescent. Luminescent? What's that about? Dara sighed. Well, it was true. Not only that, but her energy was so open, so honest, and so sincere. Carolyn was right. Rebecca didn't say anything overt about Constance, which, for the record, is Dara's pseudonym as her literary counterpart. She didn't even mention the author at all. Yet, Dara reminded herself, she hadn't said anything yet. Wasn't it only a matter of time before Rebecca leaked word to the press or sold the story along with copies of their correspondence? Or, hey, Carolyn said, peeking her head inside the room, can I come in? Dara motioned her acquiescence. There was no sense pushing Carolyn away. She'd just keep coming back until Dara agreed to talk about it. Carolyn walked in, turned on the light, and sat on the side of the bed. I recorded the show in case you change your mind about watching it. This chick, Dara Thomas, she wowed Letterman. Had him eating right out of the palm of her hand. It was really something to see. Ha, ha. You really did do a great job. You were engaging, witty, and charming. Ooh, the big three. Don't poo-poo it, Dara. This was an important moment for you, and you nailed it. Carolyn paused. Except when Dave started off by mooning over you. I thought you might punch his lights out. Was it that obvious? Not to anybody but me, but then I know how you feel about being treated like a piece of chocolate the day after Lent. Dara snorted. You have such a way with a phrase. Am I right or am I right? Of course you're right, and you know it. It's why you were so adamant that Constance not be connected to you. You wanted her to stand on her own merits. Dara narrowed her eyes. You did not just use the Letterman thing as a bridge into a discussion about Constance, did you? Carolyn winked. I did. Seriously? Seriously. You created Constance because you wanted a place to be your whole self. You wanted to be the person people admired for your intelligence and your depth instead of your cup size. My cup size is average, Dara pointed out. Don't equivocate. Oh, big word. Did you have trouble understanding me? Would you rather I used a simpler term? Need a dictionary? Dara scoffed and Carolyn pointed a finger at her. See that look? That's what I'm talking about. You bristle when anyone assumes you're just a pretty face. Of course, it's insulting. Do you remember what you told me the night Sheila revealed her true colors? Dara wrapped her arms around herself. She didn't want to do this. It was too painful. I'm sure you'll remind me. I'm sure I don't have to, but if you want me to be the one to say it, I will. Dara shook her head as a tear leaked out of the corner of her right eye. I said I could never trust anyone but you again. No one but you ever loved me for who I was. Everyone else saw the shell and never saw the person inside. I said that I felt so alone, like a blind spot inside a lighthouse beacon. Exactly. And then you cried and sat down and wrote that poem. Do you remember it? Dara nodded. How could she forget? It was written from the depths of her despair. Knowledge and illusion, I called it. Dara closed her eyes and began to recite from memory. Who will know me when I am old and gray, wizened by age and wiser for the experiences? Who knows me now when the glare of the spotlight fades and I am simply me? Who understands that I am at once so much more and so much less? Who sees me, all of me, not the fragments projected on a screen or written on a page or frozen in images that capture glimpses of things, real or imagined? Blah, blah, blah. Dara waved a hand to cover another swell of emotion she didn't want to feel. When she looked up, it was Carolyn who was crying. What? That poem was achingly sad and poignant, and all these years later, you're still asking the same questions, searching for the same thing. What's your point? What if... Carolyn twisted her wedding ring, a sure tip-off that she was nervous about her next words. Dara tensed in anticipation. She wasn't sure she wanted to know where this was going. What if Rebecca is the answer to the question? A rush of heat turned Dara's face beet red. Before you say anything, Carolyn rushed on, consider what we know so far. Rebecca had no idea who Constance was and what she looked like when she wrote that first letter. It was obvious that she admired you for your writing. Carolyn held up her fingers and ticked off that item. 2, Rebecca never once in half a dozen letters asked you anything too personal or out of bounds. She didn't pry, she didn't flirt, she didn't push to meet you. She was at all times respectful and focused on your work. Dara had to admit that everything Carolyn said was true. 3, you enjoyed the conversation. In fact, you enjoyed it so much that you let some of your real personality shine through. You showed glimpses of humor. Again, Dara couldn't dispute what Carolyn said. 4, I know you realize that this is by far the longest correspondence you've had with any reader. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that if today had never happened, you wouldn't have continued the correspondence. I want you to sit there with a straight face and say that you were done with the conversation. Dara slumped her shoulders in defeat. I can't. So what's changed? Everything. How so? How can you ask me that? You were there. She knows. She said as much. I'm no longer Constance Darrow to her now. I'm Dara Thomas, and she'll never be able to unknow that. Who says she needs to? Dara rolled her eyes. How could Carolyn be so obtuse? I do. Look, we know how this scenario goes. Now she treats me differently, and even if she says all the right things, I can't trust that she's not exactly like Sheila and everybody else like her. Now who's rushing to judgment? You have no idea who Rebecca is or what kind of person she is or what her experiences have been. Dara flashed back to the gentle kindness in Rebecca's open, honest face. She wished she could wipe that from her memory. At any rate, she'll probably take those letters to the nearest tabloid or entertainment show and sell me out. That's completely unfair. Again, I'll point out that even though she had the chance, Rebecca didn't out you as Constance. She didn't. Yet. What if she never does? What then? Then she'll be different from all the rest, but I just can't take that chance. I won't risk it. What you mean to say is you won't allow yourself to open your heart to the possibilities. Dara stood up and strode to where Carolyn was sitting. She was vibrating with anger, and she couldn't explain why. What does my heart have to do with anything? She's just a fan who provided me with some momentary entertainment. Even as she said it, Dara knew it was a lie. Carolyn stood up. Wow. Really, Dara? You're full of shit. I saw the look on your face when I handed you that last letter. You couldn't wait to open it and see what Rebecca had to say. Don't deny it. There's no point. If you want to play it safe and live your life lonely, isolated from the world for the rest of your life, I can't stop you. Carolyn headed for the door. But for the record, I think Rebecca is just the kind of person you were yearning for in that poem. I guess we'll never know now, will we? She slammed the door closed behind her.
Kerthunk.
The thunk. We need a sound effect here. I didn't want to startle people by slamming my desk.
Could you imagine all the objects rattling on top?
But anyway, that is from All That Lies Within.
Yes. And, you know, there, like, I'm going to go literary on you again, although I don't remember which author it is. And it's actually, it's like, you know, the concept is about two-ness, having two different consciousnesses. Mm-hmm. But this is in relation to race. You know, I can't remember if it was Du Bois or not. Anyway, but the concept was having like a level of two-ness, like two different
Was it Black Like Me?
Maybe. I don't remember.
It was Black. I think you're talking about Black Like Me.
I think that's possible. So yeah. my thought is about like this Constance and Dara thing is that they exist on two parallel planes. The problem is that I believe Dara has bought into that it has to be fragmented this way. And if anybody pulled the veil aside and showed that she was the author of this stuff, then, you know, they would no longer accept her or whatever. But you have the full sense of being is not just either what's on the outside, which is superficial, or what is on the inside. It has to be a combination and integration. And until she's willing to bring those parts of her together, she's not really going to find wholeness and actually being whole herself.
Agreed. Exactly. That's exactly her journey.
Yeah.
But it takes her, as you know, quite some time to figure that out.
Exactly. Possibly the length of a book.
Possibly, but we won't say.
But we won't say. So now that we've gotten all angsty, what's our next reading going to be?
Well, I thought, is your heart pounding yet?
No. Should it be?
It's not pounding yet. Okay, if that didn't make your heart pound, then I've got something that will make your heart pound.
Sweet.
Okay. We'll do a little cardio while we're here, just before bedtime, and then we'll put the kids to bed. What a great idea. So glad I thought of it. I thought I would go someplace completely different on you for a minute, move around a little bit, show a little versatility. Why not? Because in addition to writing romance, I write thrillers. I love writing thrillers, and my latest thriller is a book called Above Reproach. It is book 2 in the Mission Classified series, although promotional opportunity here. You don't have to have read the first book, which is Beyond Instinct, to read this one.
It's actually true, folks. You actually can read them separately. I've read both. And you could be, I didn't get to a certain point, and then I was like, holy shit, I actually know the first book. So yeah, so you can totally read it without reading the first, though I would recommend getting both.
Thank you so very much. And there will be more in this series. There will absolutely be more in this series. But I thought I would get your heart pounding a little bit and talk a little bit about the beginning, or close to the beginning, of Above Reproach. Mm-hmm. This book is very different from All That Lies Within. It is a thriller, and so it is plot-driven as opposed to romance-driven. And in this book, we find Sedona Ramos, who is, I think, arguably one of my favorite new characters. Sedona Ramos works for the National Security Agency. She's fluent in 3 languages. And she has other talents and abilities as well. But she is the character that we are going to see in this excerpt, which is, this is the very first time we meet her. She's working at night at the National Security Agency headquarters, where she is a translator. What she does is she listens in on, chatter of terrorists and things like that. And it's, her job to translate and catalog these things and, assess threats and so forth. The other main character in this book is, well, there are a bunch of characters. It's sort of it's a nice group, I'd like to think.
It's the A-team. No, I'm kidding.
It's the A-team, yeah, minus Mr. T and the jewelry.
Oh, no.
I know. And George Papard, poor George Papard. Well, let's not go there. Anyway, so... the other main character in this book is Vaughn Elliott, who you will meet in Beyond Instinct first. She's a former CIA officer who is currently retired and enjoying her surly retirement at the moment. But I also, in this book, bring in some beloved old characters from other work of mine as well. But you're not going to see them right here. Right here, what you're going to get is the thing that sets off the catalyst for the entire plot, if you will. So if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I even know what you're going to read from.
I bet you do.
I caught the clues.
This is Above Reproach, and this is from close to the beginning. It's not quite the beginning because there's a little setup scene at the very beginning, but you don't need to know that right now. You're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. So this is from Above Reproach. 10th of February, 2011, National Security Agency Headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. Sedona Ramos rubbed her tired eyes. It was 10 o'clock Thursday night, and already she'd logged more than 25 hours of overtime that week. Not that it was anything unusual, nor did she mind. Sedona's work ethic was part of the reason the National Security Agency recruited her so many years ago. That and the fact that she was trilingual and could pass for Middle Eastern, Latina, or Native American. All week, she'd been plodding her way through hundreds of pages of top-secret intercepted Arabic language phone and internet communications from Iraq. The last electronic file in the queue finished downloading. That's odd, Sedona said to the empty room. She scrolled through the document one more time. Unlike all the other files, this one identified by name neither the analyst who compiled the initial report nor the individual who requested it. Instead, in the places where that information should have been, was a pair of numerical sequences. That was something Sedona had never seen before. Let's just see what you are. She clicked to open the document. A chill ran through her. Never a good sign, she mumbled. When her eyes alighted on the 3 satellite images tucked in the middle of the pages of text, she understood why her blood ran cold. What the hell? Activity at Tuatha? We were done with that place 3 years ago. Shit, I was there when we locked the gates for the last time. Heeding her instincts, Sedona popped in a flash drive and copied the entire file, ejecting and pocketing the drive once the operation was complete. Then she hustled over to the series of file cabinets where a clerk would have logged and stored the corresponding physical documents as insurance against any electronic malfunctions. She thumbed through that week's files until she found the batch that pertained to Iraq. Although she paged through the series 3 times and searched adjacent batches of files, there was no matching physical file, a clear violation of protocol. Too weird. Looks like maybe somebody's coloring outside the lines. As if to confirm her suspicions, when Sedona returned to her computer, the screen was blank and there was no trace of the images or the surrounding pages of text. What the fuck's going on? I know I left that file open. She sat down and stabbed at the keys, trying to find it on the server or on her hard drive. It simply had vanished. Think, Sedona. Breathe and think, damn it. The sound of the elevator opening down the hall and running footsteps startled her. Shouldn't be anybody else in this part of the building at this hour. The pieces started to fall into place, and Sedona's heart pounded harder. She had logged into her computer with her regular username and password. Whoever this was, they would be looking specifically for her. You can't stay here, sweetie. You're a sitting duck. She grabbed several things off her desk and shoved them into her briefcase, then darted around a corner, just as several figures, dressed all in black, appeared at the entrance to what Sedona and her coworkers affectionately called the bullpen. Somewhere, someone killed the lights. Sedona, who had spent most of her career in hot spots in the field, realized the implication. The intruders had night vision goggles. Shit. Perspiration dotted her brow and her pulse hammered in her ears. She took stock of her surroundings. As the appointed fire drill coordinator for the floor, Sedona knew every exit. She removed her shoes, tucked them into her briefcase, and quietly slipped into her boss's office, since it was farthest from the elevators. Once inside, Sedona felt along the wall until her fingers found a seam. She pushed in, and a section of the wall popped open to reveal a stairway. She sprinted down the stairs, and at the garage level, opened the door a crack to make sure no one was waiting for her. Satisfied she was alone, she dashed to her car, threw the briefcase in the passenger seat, and peeled out of the garage. Her hands were shaking on the wheel as she drove along the highway that would take her north. She didn't have a definitive plan. She just knew she needed to disappear. Whatever had happened back there, it wasn't good. When she reached Baltimore a short time later, she pulled into a convenience store parking lot. She went inside, used the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and paid cash to purchase a prepaid cell phone. Then she got back in her car and used the phone to dial a familiar number. Dex, it's me. I'm in trouble. I need your help. Anything, love. What do you need? Can you help keep an eye out for any unusual activity at my place? Hold on a sec, love. I'll have a peek right now. Sedona heard the scraping of a chair, Dex's footsteps, and the sound of him whistling. She imagined him peering through the living room blinds that faced her house. Several moments later, he was back. Holy shite, kiddo. What are you into? He sounded shaken, which only made his Irish brogue thicker. Why? What's going on? There are 3 black SUVs in front of your place and some guys outside who make the Hulk look like a midget. What's this all about, then? Sedona closed her eyes tightly as panic welled up in her chest. Listen, Dex, if anybody asks you, tell them you haven't spoken to me all week and you have no idea where I am. Well, that would be the truth now, wouldn't it? So where are you? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Dex, please don't. I'll accept that you can't tell me about what it is you do or what you do for work, Sedona, but these men don't look like they're fooling around here. I can help you, but only if you level with me. Sedona swallowed hard. Dex had been her best friend since she moved in across the street from him almost 15 years ago. He was dashing and debonair and as gay as she was, which took all the awkwardness out of their relationship. But this was a line she could not cross. It was her sworn oath. Beyond that, not knowing would keep him safe. Stay away from the windows, Dex. Don't answer your door. I'll call you when I can. So don't. She didn't hear the rest as she disconnected the call. The first thing she needed to do was get rid of her car and get herself somewhere safe so she could have time to think, time to regroup. What the hell did I get myself into? That is from the beginning of Above Reproach.
I'm like, and then her thumb drive disintegrated because...
Did not.
Did not. I think it was like those Mission Impossible. I was like, oh, fuck moments.
Do. Never mind.
Yes. Well, you know what it is, and this actually came up in GCLS. I was in a session, whatever. You don't realize what kind of training, like she has for real, honest to God training, but you don't know what kind of crisis training you have until you're in the midst of a crisis.
That's absolutely true.
And I know you know that because you have a consulting company that helps people when they're in crisis.
Crisis management. Well, and I've been in my own share, including in the middle of a riot at Attica. So I know crisis, yeah.
So for me, this little vignette, little short story of my own, I was working across from Grand Central Station on 9/11. Which was incidentally my last week of work because I was looking to get another job. And I was working for LexisNexis, and I think people who do research know about them. Anyway, so what happened was...
and by the way, just before you go there, I actually used to work across the street from Grand Central Station, just so you know.
Ah, yes. Right next to...
the Shannon building on the corner of 42nd and Lex.
Yeah, we were considered Park Avenue, even though we're like on the corner. But
I know right where you were. Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was, like, everybody knows that the events with the Twin Towers happened in the morning.
Right.
And so we were either, at our desks, or they actually, they moved some audiovisual into the lobby, so that the lobby of our area, so that we could watch what was going on. Anyway, it took about till 12 o'clock for the powers to be set that we could leave and go home for the day. Mm-hmm. And so my friend Matt, who's 40 at the time, and I think I was 23, 24, anyway, so we're going down, and as we're getting out of the elevators, normally we would go right to 42nd Street. But I saw thousands of people booking down the street, which obviously didn't get it into the news feed for 9/11. So people were running. I was like, I don't want to go there. So I grabbed Matt by the wrist and I walked him through the deli that was in the other portion of the building. And then I had to shoulder through because there were people, and I find this disgusting but common, people wanted to see if more shit was going to blow up.
Oh my God.
So they were in the side street waiting to see if something was going to happen at Grand Central Station. I was like, you guys are ridiculous. So Matt, who's this sweet, gorgeous, tall gay boy, I grab him by his hand because he'd be too nice. So I went through the crowd, I went off to the left, and I was running with Matt. And then I was like, oh my God, we have to get away from Park Avenue because, we're right by Grand Central. There are a lot of lines beneath, train lines beneath it. If something explodes, maybe the floor is going to collapse. Right. So I was like, okay, so we're going to go right. We're going to go towards the Hudson River. But I was like, but not too close to the Empire State Building because that also could be like a target.
So many targets.
So in New York City, right? And we were like running and running and running, and then he lived above Henrietta Hudson's, which is on by Christopher Street on Hudson Street.
Yeah, I know right where it is. Sure.
Exactly. So that was
Village, for those of you who don't know, it's in Greenwich Village.
It is in Greenwich Village, and it also was what was considered the frozen zone. Anybody or any place beneath 14th Street going in the direction of where the Twin Towers was a no man's land, pretty much. But those different things that were cycling through my head and my survival instincts and decisions that I made, honestly, were informed a lot by things that I've read and things that I've watched.
Huh.
But I had those little survival skill things like planted in my brain,
Right.
So whenever, I think it was Andy Marquette had this thing at GCLS where she was showing different pictures of end of days scenarios and how to write within the context of whatever these particular settings were. And that's when I told the story.
Like Andy.
Yes. And that's where I ended up telling the story. I was like, I had no idea I had this stuff in my head. So but my partner loves zombie films and post-apocalyptic films and all whatnot. So all these different, don't go there, go this way, whatever. All of it was cycling through my brain. And I was like, you know what? those things didn't happen, but they could have. And because in reality, what happened during 9/11 was so shocking that if that was possible, anything was possible. And that's how I made decisions and ascertain what a threat level was and whatnot. And so it's very interesting for, going back into fiction with Sedona. She's just like, first of all, this is not right. All right, I got to record this. Oh, where's this corresponding file? Not there. I'm going back. It's blank. I hear feet. People are coming this way. What the hell am I going to do? Good thing that I'm in charge of knowing all the exits are because for fire drills and whatnot. And I was like, what perfect information she had for getting out there. And you didn't
Shocking, isn't it?
It's amazing. But what else I felt telling it, and this is only, it's within the same scene, was that she had a bag packed,
She had what we call a go bag.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, any agent would.
Which is smart. But I was just like, oh, shit. Because at first I kind of didn't get the detail that, a lot of what she learned and what she was doing was in the field. And I was thinking this, not bureaucrat in a bad way, but I was like, oh my God, shit is really serious. This is really serious in the NSA. You're a translator and this kind of shit. You have to have a go bag. Oh my God. What?
Oh my God, I don't want to work there. Actually, I have friends who do.
Yes. I know that you do a lot of great research and you speak to people who are germane to the field. Not just
amounts of research.
Copious amounts of research.
Copious amounts of research. Yes.
So we've gone from angsty to heart rate monitor material. What are you going to
someplace in the middle?
Yeah. What are you going to sock us with next?
Well, okay, so we've done romance, we've done contemporary romance, we've done poetry, we've done thriller. I thought maybe we'd go for action-adventure romance. What do you think?
Sweet. Go for it.
Are you there? Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay, so, and this is by popular request. I have to say that when I knew that Liz and I were going to be sitting down like this, in our boxers, in separate locations, lest anyone wonder. Anyway, so I asked all of my wonderful Facebook friends, and they really are a wonderful group. My goodness, they are so responsive. I asked them what they wanted to hear. I thought that would be a good place to start. What if I was reading you a bedtime story? What would you like to hear? And a great number of them, to my surprise, said they would love to hear more of Kate and Jay. The Kate and Jay trilogy is the very first thing I ever wrote. And it's the very first thing I ever wrote in this context, let's put it that way. In terms of lesbian fiction, it's not the very first thing I ever wrote. But Kate and Jay, for whatever reason, are my most beloved characters ever. I originally envisioned it as one book. It ended up being 3, and everyone keeps clamoring for more, and the good news is they're actually going to get more. I am going to write another Kate and Jay, and in fact, as you know, having read Above Reproach, Kate and Jay actually appear in Above Reproach as well.
Yeah, and Jay likes to eat a lot of food.
She doesn't. She stays rail thin. I don't know how she does it. I want to be her when I grow up.
My nephew, by marriage, he's 6'3", and he eats like a horse and can barely keep his clothes on his bones.
I know. It's a moment of envy, isn't it? It's like, how is that humanly possible? I want to eat all that. I do. I want to be able to eat all that and look the way I want to look, but it just doesn't work that way.
So you're going to be serving up some
Jay. I'm
going
to serve up some Kate and Jay.
Kate and Jay from old school.
This is very old school. I'm going to take you all the way back to the very beginning of Kate and Jay, which is Back to the Price of Fame, which is the very first book I wrote in this genre. It's the very first book I published, and it is, it's most beloved, and I find that very endearing, if not a bit head-scratching. But anyway, let me just tell you just a very little bit about Kate and Jay so you know who they are. I'll read you, actually, the synopsis for the Back of the Price of Fame. When local television news anchor Catherine Kyle is thrust into the national spotlight, it sets in motion a chain of events that will change her life forever. Jameson J. Parker is an intensely career-driven Time magazine reporter. She has experienced love once from afar and given up on finding it again. That is, until circumstance and an assignment bring her into contact with her past. Kate and Jay's lives intertwine, leading them on a journey to love and happiness until fate and fame threaten to tear them apart. What is the price of fame? For Kate, the cost just might be everything. For Jay, the price could be the other half of her soul. And I will mention that Kate and Jay, for this purpose, because I'm going to be reading from chapter 5 of The Price of Fame, I will mention that Kate and Jay went to college together, although they were 3 years apart, and they met briefly in college, although nothing of note, of great note, transpired between them back then. Kate is the one who is older than Jay, just for the record. You ready? Mm-hmm. Let's have us some Kate and Jay, shall we? This, the Capitol has exploded. Kate was covering it as the local television anchor. And this is in the aftermath of the Capitol exploding and Kate being caught up in it and being the only reporter on site. She has been asked to go and do a stint on all the morning talk shows in New York, as anybody who watches the morning talk shows knows that it really works this way. So this is a little bit about Kate and Jay. Jay went down and found Kate at the scene of the explosion. She was in town to interview the governor. And so they reconnected, saw each other once again after the explosion of the Capitol. And Kate has invited Jay to go along with her to New York to take a ride back to New York, because that's where Jay is actually stationed. So this is the morning that they are getting ready to go down and do the talk shows in New York. When the two women emerged from Kate's house, the driver was standing at attention outside the limo's back door. His instructions said there would be only one passenger, but it was all the same to him, especially when both of his charges were as absolutely stunning as these two were. They were like yin and yang, the one tall, dark, and intense, with the bluest eyes he'd ever seen, the other about 7 inches shorter, blonde and approachable, with sparkling eyes the color of emeralds. She lacked the overt power of her companion, but she was slender and graceful like an athlete and clearly in great shape. Yeah, tough job, but somebody's got to do it. Jay smiled at the uniformed driver as Kate stepped aside to allow her to get in first. Just as she was about to slide in, Kate pulled her back. Oh, no, you don't. I refuse to be responsible for you looking like a Shar-Pei. She winked. Off with the suit jacket. Jay shook her head good-naturedly and complied. Underneath, she wore a simple sleeveless black shell. The top clung to her breasts and accentuated her slim waist, and the lack of sleeves showed off her muscular arms to good advantage. Kate was inordinately grateful that she could occupy herself hanging up the jacket. She was sure she must have been drooling. Kyle, you've got to get a grip here. When they were settled in the car and the driver had raised the privacy glass, Kate turned to Jay. I'm really glad you're here. I still can't believe you found me. You could have knocked me over with a feather when I turned on my TV set and saw you. I hung up on my editor in mid-sentence. Of course, she's always in mid-sentence. After a while, Kate noticed Jay's eyelids growing heavy. Eventually, sleep claimed her. Smiling, Kate regarded her affectionately. You look a bit uncomfortable to me, Jay. Her smile turned to a full-fledged grin. I think I can fix that. Scooting back into the corner of the seat, she gently pulled Jay with her. She settled Jay's head against her chest, rested her cheek on her soft hair, enfolded Jay in her arms, and joined her in peaceful slumber. Jay was having the nicest dream. In it, she was resting in Kate's arms, listening to the steady beat of her heart. It was the safest, most content she'd ever felt. And then it dawned on her that dreams usually didn't involve a sense of smell. She inhaled again the delicious scent of Shalimar perfume that she identified so strongly with Kate. Hesitantly, she cracked open one eye, and her heart rate soared as she took in her position, nestled against Kate. She wasn't quite sure how she got to where she was, but she sure wasn't sorry. Feeling Kate's rhythmic breath ruffling her hair and the thump of her heartbeat against her ear, Jay thought that she probably should move. The problem was her body didn't want to go anywhere at the moment. So, with a blissful sigh, she closed her eyes again and drifted back to sleep. The world intruded gradually on Kate's all-too-brief nap. Her wounds were making themselves felt and her eyes were gritty. As she took stock of her location, she noted that Jay was still tucked tightly against her body where she fell asleep. Kate's arms were wrapped securely around her, and Jay's arms were resting on top of her, stitched and bandaged ones. The pressure accounted for some of Kate's pain, but she had no desire to let go. It occurred to Kate that Jay would soon awaken. Better move before Sleeping Beauty awakens, Kyle. She considered her options and frowned. She either would have to prop Jay up against the seat or let her fall to the floor. Kate shook her head. Not going to happen here. She settled for owing Jay an explanation when she regained consciousness, which, as it turned out, didn't take long. Feeling Jay stir, Kate lifted her cheek off Jay's head. Hi. Jay made no effort to move. I hope you don't mind. You fell asleep in an awkward position, and I didn't want you to be stiff and sore when you woke up. I figured I would be a decent pillow, and Kate stopped and released a breath. She was babbling uncharacteristically, and she knew it. Anyway, she finished weakly, not knowing what else to say. That's okay. You make a great pillow, and that's the best rest I've had in a long time. Thanks. Kate let out a relieved breath and released her grasp. Her eyes followed Jay's as they alighted on the position of their arms. Oh my God, Kate, did I hurt you? Jay sat up and looked into Kate's face. Nope, everything's fine. Kate schooled her face to hide her discomfort. Actually, her arms were throbbing. At that moment, the limousine pulled up to a stop. Kate looked out the window at the lightning sky and at the NBC Peacock logo, then back at Jay. For a stop, you ready for the circus? The door swung open on the curbside, and the driver helped Jay from the car. Kate followed behind with Jay's jacket and her own garment bag. You gonna wait for us? Yes, ma'am. My instructions are to take you to each network and then anywhere else you have to go today until I drop you at the airport. By the way, I was told to tell you you're booked on a 2:30 commuter out of LaGuardia. Okay, thank you. See you in a bit then. Kate helped Jay into her suit jacket, grasped her gently by the elbow, and escorted her into the Rockefeller Center studios of NBC's Today Show. They were met at the reception desk by a harried-looking producer. Barely glancing at Jay, the woman gave Kate's outfit a disgusted look and grabbed at her arm to hustle her away. Kate didn't move. The woman looked up at her impatiently. I'm Catherine Kyle, Kate said with a barely disguised sneer. Already she didn't like the producer. And this is Miss Jamison Parker. I know who you are, lady. That's why I'm here. Kate ignored both the woman's interruption and her grating accent. Miss Parker is with me. Would you please make sure she's made comfortable and given something to eat and some coffee while I'm getting ready? It was more a command than a request. Yeah, I'll take care of it, okay? Now let's get going. They're waiting for you in makeup. Kate still didn't budge. Finally, the woman sighed in exasperation and turned to Jay with a plastic smile. Would you please come with me, Miss Parker? Jay turned the expression in kind. Why, of course, thank you for asking. Satisfied that Jay was being well cared for in the green room, Kate relaxed into the makeup chair. Good morning, she said to the man who smiled at her in the mirror. Hey there, sweetie, he enthused. Oh, this is going to be fun. Any last requests before I get started? Kate couldn't help but smile at the man's upbeat attitude. She knew she looked like hell. The small cuts and abrasions on her left cheek were going to be hard to hide completely, and her normally vibrant eyes looked tired. Sorry for the major reclamation project, she said, but you should see the other guy. Her makeup stylist laughed delightedly. Honey, it's going to be a pleasure working with that gorgeous face and hair. Believe me, last week I had to make up Phyllis Dillard. Don't even ask. Half an hour later, Kate emerged from the chair and stopped the nearest official-looking person. I need a phone, she said. There's one in the green room. Okay, let me go change my clothes, and then could someone point me in the right direction? Kate took the garment bag with her and disappeared behind the indicated door. She emerged 10 minutes later and followed her escort to the green room where guests sat until it was time for them to be on air. Jay was sitting in the green room in a comfortable-looking leather chair with her eyes closed and a cup of coffee close at hand. Kate snuck into the room and gazed down at the adorable blonde head. A lock of hair had fallen into her eye, and Kate eased it off her face. Jay, honey, time to get up. Jay mumbled something unintelligible. Then her eyes snapped open and she stared over. Holy mother! Self-deprecatingly, Kate looked down at herself in her business attire and smirked as Jay stamped. You look amazing! Kate gave her a brilliant smile. Thanks, coming from you, that means a lot. In truth, Kate was surprised to realize just how much Jay's opinion really did matter. I just need to make a phone call, then it'll be time to go, okay? How's the coffee, any good? Are you always this talkative in the morning? I'm not really a morning person, Jay confessed sheepishly. Kate moved to the phone on the side table and dialed a number from memory. Hi, it's Kate. What's the latest? She listened intently for a few minutes. Okay, I'm going to call one of my contacts over at SPD and see if I can't get anything more solid on the incendiary device. I doubt he'll give me anything, but you never know. A few more seconds of listening, and she hung up. She turned to Jay and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I just need to make one more call. I want to make sure I've got everything there is to get on this story before someone asks me a question I can't answer. No problem. You just do what you need to do. It goes on in this way, but I'm going to skip ahead, if you don't mind.
Skip ahead.
I'm going to skip ahead to get to the good parts. Would you like me to skip ahead to get to the good parts?
Please do. Okay.
La 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 la. Kate does the
Your elevator music sucks.
Oh, sing for us here. Would you like me to sing for you instead?
It's okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. I could, but la la la. Anyway, so she does the appearance. Okay, she does the appearance, and I could talk about the appearance and tell you how well she does and how adequately she acquits herself on the air, talking about the bombing. But I'm not going to do that. Okay? Let's whiz right past the interviews. Don't do it if you're reading the book. But for these purposes, we're going to move on a little bit so you can see more of Kate and Jay. This is after the interviews, okay, which all go spectacularly. Anyway, she looked over at Jay, who appeared to be fairly wide awake. I can't tell you what it's meant to me to have you here with me through all of this, Jay. You've really been a trooper. I would hardly classify the past 8 hours as a hardship, Kate. I've loved every minute of it. I'm so glad I found you. You must be exhausted. I'd love to take you out to breakfast, but I don't want to monopolize your time or keep you from a well-deserved nap. Kate, I've never turned down a good meal in my life, and I'm not about to start now, especially with such enjoyable company, she added shyly. I'd love to have breakfast with you. I know a great place in Midtown that makes the most amazing waffles. Is it a casual place? I'm dying to get out of this suit and back into my jeans. You bet. I'll just change here then. I won't be a sec. So this is a little about Kate and Jay getting to know each other. Okay? I will skip past the getting to know each other part because this is, where they sort of sigh and look at each other and they talk about their families and so forth. Right? They talk a little bit about their families. Moving on.
Nothing to see here.
Jay says, what was that?
Nothing to see here, folks. Moving along.
So move along. Nothing to see here. Jay tells her that she wanted to be an author, and Kate says, what kind of books did you want to write, and do you write now other than magazine articles? She said, I wanted to chronicle the human condition, write the next great American novel. And yes, I still write for pleasure from time to time. I haven't anything published yet, though. You will. It was said with such confidence, Jay wondered how she could know that. The question must have shown in her face because Kate went on, I have a really good feeling about that. And besides, I've read all of your articles. She looked down at the table, apparently embarrassed by her admission. Jay's face turned beet red. You have? You didn't say anything. I didn't want you to think I was some sort of deranged fan or something. Your work is really excellent. I love your writing style. The humanity just shines through. Jay was at a complete loss. She didn't know what to say and didn't trust her voice just then anyway. She took a moment to compose herself, then said, I think that writing is a product of one's own life experiences. She surprised herself with that admission. She hadn't meant to reveal that much. Jameson is an interesting name. Where did it come from? I'm not going to tell you this part. Because it goes into Jay's history, and I don't want to go into Jay's history for these purposes. Because
this is the funniest reading I have had ever.
Is this the best reading, ever?
Oh, my God. Oh, forget about this, blah, 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 blah.
They make a trip to FAO Sports, someplace I know that you are familiar with.
Yes.
Right? They play in the toy store. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Kate decides, after this heavy conversation with Jay, that she's going to lighten up the tone. So they go into FAO Schwartz, and they spend a half hour romping through the store, trying out toys, playing with the train sets, jumping from key to key on the gigantic toy piano, which many of you will remember from the movie, what?
Big.
Thank you. You are paying attention. When they were both totally exhausted, Kate called a timeout. As much as I can't believe I'm going to say this, we've got to go, Jay. The limo will be waiting, and I've got to get you back to your place. Now we get to the good stuff, so that you can get ready for your interview with the governor. Spoil sport, Jay joked. Kate was glad she was able to help Jay have some fun after their serious conversation. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of that. Kate walked Jay to the door of her apartment, which is where? In Greenwich Village on Christopher Street.
Shut up!
Stop! No. Keep reading. No. Okay. Can you come in? Jay asked. I'd love to, but the limo is double parked and your neighbors might not take too kindly to having their street blocked. Yeah, I guess you're right. Kate heard the note of dejection in Jay's voice. She didn't want their time together to end either, so she ventured, some other time? You're on. Jay leaned forward on her tiptoes and gave Kate a sweet kiss on the cheek. Thanks for everything. You sure know how to show a girl a good time. She stepped back and gazed up shyly into Kate's eyes. Kate knew she couldn't just walk away this time. She gently pulled Jay to her and maintained eye contact as she inclined her head and softly touched her lips to Jay's. Then she straightened up again, stepped back, and smiled. I thought you said there was no kissing on the first date. Number one, those were Fred's rules. Fred is Kate's golden retriever. He's just a teenager after all, Kate winked. And number two, I wasn't aware that this counted as an official date. But if that's the way you feel, me and my big mouth. Kate fought hard to keep the smile off her face. She pushed the door open a little wider and took a predatory step forward. Once inside the doorway, she slowly extended her arm and, staring hungrily at Jay's mouth, ran her thumb lightly across Jay's lips. I happen to think you have a perfect mouth. Jay swallowed hard, her lips parted slightly as she leaned into the touch, her teeth just grazing Kate's thumb. Kate thought she'd never seen anything so sexy. She dragged her eyes away from Jay's mouth and up to her eyes, shut the door behind her with her foot, and bent her head in one smooth motion to capture Jay's mouth in a heart-stopping kiss. Several long, languorous moments later, aren't you glad I skipped the other part? Kate pulled back slowly and smiled. Now you know why. She began, but had to clear her throat before she could go on. I hate to kiss and run, but I really do have to get going. The note of regret in her voice was unmistakable. Jay hummed, her eyes still closed. Oh, her eyes flew open. Yeah, right. Kate turned to go and grasped the doorknob. Jay put her hand on Kate's arm and squeezed. Could I maybe call you tonight, just to make sure you got home okay? Absolutely. When Jay didn't release her arm and began shifting uncomfortably from one foot to the other, Kate looked at her questioningly. I don't know how to reach you, she said bashfully. Kate grabbed a business card and a pen from her pocket and wrote her home number and address on the back in bold strokes. Now you do, she gave her the card. Okay, then, you're sure it's all right? I don't want to disturb you or anything. Jay, I've been disturbed for years. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and turned around to wink at Jay before she disappeared. Once alone inside the limo, Kate leaned back into the leather interior and closed her eyes. A goofy grin split her face. Oh, no, Fred isn't getting to kiss you, Jay. You're already taken, and I will not suffer the competition lightly. And that is from The Price of Fame.
This has been a fantastic and quite unusual episode of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories.
I do try to be different, dear.
Why be ordinary?
I don't want to be ordinary.
Yes.
Why be ordinary when you can be extraordinary?
What an awkward word, that word. If you're trying to remember how to spell it. Extraordinary.
Extraordinary. Yeah. Can you spell as well as a 5-year-old?
Oh, I spell horribly, but I have an excuse. I'm dyslexic and I never quite learned how to read and write properly the first time around, mostly due to hostility on my part. Because I was like a very bright kid who was very pissed at my inability to do things that I thought I should absolutely be able to do.
Well, and look where it's driven you.
I know, it's just so bizarre. You can't even get stranger than this. I hated reading. I hated it. But here's an interesting little side note. I got into reading when I was a lifeguard at a pool in a condominium complex. So I had a lot of time to kill. And
hopefully no people at the pool.
No, but I haven't killed anybody yet.
There you go.
No, we're talking about basically empty pool a lot of the time. A lot of people are just sunbathing anyway. So the house that I live in now was at the time just a summer home. And the doctor who had owned it previously left some books behind on a shelf. And some of the books were things like Grisham and whatnot. But some of them were Harlequin-like romances.
Oh.
And exactly. And the thing is, I got... popular fiction is the reason why I overcame my dislike of reading to the point where it's one of my favorite ways to entertain myself. Mm-hmm. So you have given us a poem that became a book, and you made everybody freak out, because of some filing error. And then, of course, you finished us off with 2 very beloved characters, which, incidentally, you had told me on air, it actually, your first book is still the one that sells the best.
It is by far and away the best-selling book I have, The Price of Fame. It is, and more often than not, when I get fan mail, I get questions about Kate and Jay, and everybody wanted me to write more and more Kate and Jay. And the thing is, I always envisioned it as a trilogy. As in done, as in finished. And the thing, I could have made a lot more money if I had wanted to write more Kate and Jay. But the thing of it was, you need to be true to the characters. You always need to be true to the characters and stick with that integrity. It isn't about the money. I can't believe I'm going to say that out loud. But I just did, didn't I? But to me, I always knew what Jay was going to be doing. I just told you what Jay was going to be doing, right? She's going to be an author. But I could never figure out after the trilogy what it was Kate was going to be doing. Until now. And now that I know, now we can move forward.
Yes, and if you want to know more, you're simply going to have to buy Above Reproach.
You're simply going to have to buy Above Reproach, yes. And then the next book in the Kate and J series, and then the next book in the Mission Classified series.
And then the next one, and the next one, and the one after that.
And then the next romance, and then
the next is thriller.
Thriller, okay, yeah.
So, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Such a pleasure to be here. It's such a pleasure to be here.